check. Everything is copacetic. All right. Take 2,000,000 times. Perfect podcast whenever. We're on episode 49. It's a special episode. Before we get into it, some housekeeping. The Ganja Ninja channel is rolling in the green. So make sure you go over there. You can probably click on the thing somewhere or another here. And also my Patreon. If you're trying to learn some of the tips and tricks of the things of the trade, whether it be marketing, production, or all that other mess, just check out my Patreon. Also, I do stone birth chart readings. So maybe I could read your birth chart. You go ahead and check out the Patreon. All the links for that below and the donations tab, because this is not possible without viewers like you donating to my black ass. Okay, so today's episode is a very special episode to me because it's a guest that I decided to invite, and I don't invite guests like that. I'm not that cool, you know? And it's like you invite a guest and like, you know, for what? You know, it's like you got to have a reason. You know, I had co-hosts and that was cool, but this is special because today we're going to be getting into some very interesting topics and very interesting subjects. So, live and direct from, what do you broadcast from New York, fam? This is New York?
Yeah, we in Brooklyn.
New York City?
Yeah.
live and direct from New York, I bring to you Meron Menghistab. Now, Meron, just to let you know, is a good buddy of mine. We have a few projects that we've like dabbled together in school, but I met Meron in school, photo school, and he's definitely more of a photo aficionado than I am. And to be honest, this dude is one of the main reasons why I probably made it through a lot of my classes that were very, very pivotal. But that being said, he's taken his photo career to a level and a depth that I would have never even imagined going to photo school, and he's representing in a way that is the reason why we're friends. So I'm very happy to have him. Meron, thank you for joining us on the Bassick podcast for Never.
Thanks for having me, dog. Happy to be here.
Now I didn't want to list your like, what do you call it? Do you call it a discography? Like your
photography?
What do you call
discography? It? That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Your discography is deep, man. It's like, it's almost to the point now where you're just, it's almost like I'm worried that jobs that are too cool are just like not even cool enough for you anymore. Like I'll name drop. There's Billie Eilish out there. That's one, right? But then there's like one out of a million. How many people do you think you've photographed up to this point, like celebrity or otherwise, like for jobs and gigs?
I mean, in terms of commissions, definitely more than I can count for sure. But you know, some people are more memorable than others too, so it's kind of...
Hey, it be like that, and I think we're going to get into that. That's pretty funny. So talk to me a little bit about the difference between now and when you were in school. When we were in RIT, I mean, I remember the first thing I wanted to do when I left RIT was stop taking photos. So talk to me about your experience with the photo game and how you felt about it, and what it's become now, and like where you're at and what the main difference is for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that... So I graduated college at 21, right? So it's, at least I was 21 when I graduated. It was, I think, super scary in a lot of ways, just because you don't actually have any rule books. There's no like, you get hired here and then that's just how it keeps moving, right? There's no ladder in that way. And also just like not seeing that many people look like me in the industry, I think like made it kind of confusing. You didn't have any big homies that you could kind of talk to. And you know, over the years, I've definitely met people who have huge influence on me in terms of like showing me a lot of things I need to know, but definitely was scary to start because you just don't know. Is like a, you know, as a African kid from Seattle, I didn't really have any idea how this shit moved. Whereas like now I think that is a lot more effort to kind of try to have a lot of different perspectives in the industry. More, but I wouldn't say a good amount, just there is more. I think that like I feel more comfortable now in terms of like there's space for me to operate over the years and just like actually do my thing in my perspective and not worry about fitting into some sort of box that ain't me.
It's crazy to think we like graduated 2011. Shit's literally a fucking decade ago, dog.
Yeah, dog.
Like, not to say that shit's like so time. Talk to me a little bit more. You just said like the role models. I know I have a lot of artists that view my show and a lot of people that are like trying to find their way on an independent level. What have you found has been your best, I guess I want to say resource or tool, but what have you found as far as technique on teaching yourself if you didn't have a role model and you needed to get something figured out? Are you just a YouTube baby?
Oh, I feel that. I think I've actually only recently really embraced YouTube. I'm like really realizing what it can do. I think for a long time, I know it's mad funny. I'm just an old man about it. It's got
all the cheat codes, bro.
It's mad, but mostly because I feel like I'm a physical learner. Like I need someone to show me how to do something. So, but then the way that translates with something like photography, where you can't necessarily do that always, is like I'm just not scared to ask people questions. Like if I know you and you're my peer or even like someone who's older maybe or more experienced, like I'm just not scared to ask people questions. I think it's always been a part of me, and I make it very clear that's like it's not about like taking like, oh, I want to take what you have. And I think a lot of people have this weird fear of that, but I think for me it's more like I've set that tone of, oh, you ever need a question answered? Why would I not answer it for you? And I hope that you would return that. And I think that I've kind of set that tone with a lot of people over the years. So it's just like, I've always just like, if I have a question, I go through the Rolodex in my head of peers and community or whatever, and be like, phone call, text, email, hey, I was just thinking about this thing. Like, I feel like you could explain this better to me. I think I'm not really grasping it. And I'm always just feel like I've tried to make it clear I would do that for other people. And so I think that it's made a good relationships for me in that way to like answer hella questions.
No, that's pretty dope. I think that's I would say it's a very Seattle thing of you to do. But it's funny. I found myself even in the music industry trying to like have that approach, especially when I was like living in Brooklyn, like with the industry. And I think different industries respond differently to that. And I mean, I'm glad that has clicked and worked for you. I get hella frustrated when I'm like, yo, I was trying to help you, man. I was trying to put myself forward. You put yourself out, and then there's like that. I always wonder if it's like that. I mean, it's human nature. Is this human nature or is it like industry specific?
No, I think there's a human nature
like,
aspect.
We don't fuck. We keep it clicky.
Yeah, I think that it's right. So I wouldn't necessarily say only just human nature, but I think it's like not to get this way, but like almost like capitalistic nature of like IP property and it's mine and I don't want to give it up to anyone, right? Like, so it's like, I think a lot of people, so for example, this guy, all right, so I used to work for this photographer and we were on a job once, and I think it's like the ultimate example that just like set the tone of how I approach information and sharing information. It was like, we got on this job, it's a pretty big job, and he tells like the art director or whatever, like, hey, by the way, Meron's a really good photographer, like you should literally it was just like, hire him, he's fucking good, like you should fuck with this kid. And after the job, I was like, hey man, like, it was just it wasn't awkward for me, but it was more like, wow, like, like you're just trying to set me up to compete almost, right? Like I potentially could take a job from you, right? Like, yeah. And he said the best fucking bomb you could drop on somebody. He was like, I got like 10 years in the game over you. If I'm worried about someone who just got here taking things from me, like I'm not good enough. Like I shouldn't worry about what someone who's that far behind me is gonna catch up to. What the fuck? You always help the younger homies because they're not. You're a bum if you can't.
That's a very mature way to look at it, man. See,
I agree with it.
Another reason, I admire you because it's like I admire you for keeping a heavy duty circle. It takes a real person in your circle or someone you work with to break that down for you and tell you that and let you know that, man.
I just think like, not to harp on this too long, but I just feel like if I share resources with people, I don't have a problem with it because that's confidence that I'm good as fuck at what I do. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, we can get into the Instagram side of things in a minute. Yeah. So talk about like in your career when you felt like your first big break was, or when it was. I say when you felt like, but when did you feel when you got the gig and you're like, oh shit.
Man, I mean, as soon as my bills were getting paid by this shit, I felt fucking blessed. That's it. I have a very low bar of. Like
hey man, keep it grateful. That's
what's up. This is literally just like I can't chalk it up to a certain job because the thing is, like when you a lot of I'll very openly admit like a lot of the times the more noticeable jobs like celebrities or whatever, they don't necessarily pay that well, right? So it's like
sure,
when people are kind of like, oh, you shot all these celebrities or all these things, I'm just like, yeah, well, it's a career or culturally accomplishment, sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean I feel successful. I think I have to, as a business, right? So there's two things, like people are seeing the creative outlet, but it's also a business. So like I can't sit here and say I felt successful at X, Y, and Z if I didn't, as a business, feel like I was profiting that high, right? So it's like
so resting on those laurels kind of thing because you got the names, so the discography isn't necessarily
right.
value.
It's like you have to. Are you running a? Listen, I'm not somebody who wants big nice things, but it's like more like once I'm like, as a business model, feel like this is like somewhere that's like peaked, then I'll be like I'm a big shit. You know what I mean? Like, not to make it all about money, but it's like
I respect that though. That's a very, again, a mature way to look at the whole situation, man. Not many people bring this perspective to anything, and this is like a lot, especially when it comes to creative stuff. It's like people are always trying to hit that orgasmic mark, and I mean, shoot, I'm sure as fuck if I even tried to wrap my mind around photography, I would be so like lost spiritually. Just like I tend to get in the music industry where it's like you try to hit the mark, but
I'm trying to live. My success to me is more Chad Hugo than Pharrell. Like I'm trying to like just be rich in the cut than more
behind the scenes.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not worried about people knowing who I am or seeing me out here like that. I like fucking moving, and if you know about it, you know about it.
I feel that. So then tell me who is or has been your favorite person to shoot or your favorite experience, like whether it be the most uplifting, maybe it's the most inspiring. What's been the greatest to shoot?
Man, that's hard.
I mean, you probably have a bunch of fucking stories. I fucking remember shooting famous decks with you.
Yeah.
I always love when you hit me up for the random jobs because it's like cool. It's cool because it means you respect my photo skill.
Yeah, definitely.
That's important for me. I was like, that's what's up. But
also just like I think
I remember going to famous decks.
I just feel like that famous deck shoot was actually, I would say that it was a hell of fun shoot. That was a good time. I mean, we chased them through Times Square basically. I don't know. That's tough. I think I had a nice afternoon with Lakeith Stanfield, the homie from Atlanta.
Okay.
I did a job shooting him, and I think he was just it's interesting to see someone who plays these very eccentric characters in person and like just getting to interact with them and have a casual conversation. I thought that was probably like one of the more, let me put it this way, less about my favorite shoot, but the most memorable of like interaction with someone that you otherwise wouldn't.
I dig that. I'm not gonna put you on the spot and ask you who was the toughest gig, but I would ask you, what is the hardest part about doing photography gigs, especially whether you're dealing with celebrity or you're dealing with, I know like there's deadlines, there's like there's stuff you got to bring, you got to be prepared, but you know when you're dealing with people, what's been the hardest part about it?
I think the hardest part is I'll give you two answers. One is more literal in terms of photography. It's really hard to photograph people when they're always on their phone, first of all. Like, I think, no, but it is. But and I say that more than just a literal sense of looking at your phone, but like everything, like I photographed someone the other day who like in between every photo shoot, anytime my camera went down and I like was changing lenses or something, they were like Instagramming the day, you know, and it's just like, there's just like, everyone's just stepped up a notch in terms of controlling their look. And I think that kind of just makes for like it. I'm not somebody who looks to make photos of people that are like, oh, this is what they're actually like. Like, I don't really think of it that way. It's more so it's just like, there's still a disconnect to the day if like you're on your phone the whole time. And so I think
personally feel that way. You're saying?
What do you say?
Are you saying you feel like someone is disconnected from the day when they do that?
Yeah, I just think that it's like there's kind of this disconnect to the day of not even a day, whatever 10 minutes I have with them or whatever.
But your experience, like you're not even there for the photo shoot.
Yeah, and it's like, and if they are, it's like these spurts of, okay, I'm ready to look the way I want to look, and then I kind of go back to my phone.
And then that fucking thing, yeah, dude, that's so weird.
So I think as a photographer, it becomes, particularly with people, it becomes, and that's not necessarily only celebrities, right? Like, that's plenty of people. That's not all of us. So it's not just a celebrity thing. Obviously, it's more when someone has like 10 million followers, whatever fucking number they have on their social media following, but. Just that weird awareness of brand is super weird. Is just odd.
I can imagine, man. Yo, I remember a year or so after I graduated, and I was like in New York looking for gigs, and I came across my old NYU program where I was learning multimedia, and I just remembered thinking like, you know, I set up the curriculum, and I remember even teaching a class, and I was like, all right, we're going to do a portrait assignment. You know, you got the week to do it. They come back after a week. I was like, take 25 photos of, at least 2 or 3 people. Like, get some numbers. Like, yo, when I was in school, when I was in school, you had to submit at least 500 photos, and it's not like they would even look at that. You have to submit the whole contact, like show that you did the work. And so I told the kids to take photos, portraits, and they were like, can we do self-portraits? And I said, yo, to be honest, you can if you get creative. And they said, can we do selfies? And I was just like, my heart like was just, it went cold, man, because I was just like, they were handed cameras, like actual Nikon DSLR cameras, and they wanted to point them at themselves and do that, and it shows like the narrative. I don't want to say, well, photographers used to take photos of a story and tell something, through the person they're engaging, but man, it seems like with this everybody has a camera thing, everybody's narrative is a possibility. So it like makes this odd taking of the photo, this weird third party. It makes this like extra person in the room. I think like the social media or the cell phone kind of thing puts like this extra eye. It makes a double you kind of. It makes like another you. It's like you and then what people want, your eyes want you to see, what you want people to see through your eyes or some shit. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's really a double-edged sword, right? Because I think that particularly in the history of photography, people didn't really get to control their narrative. So now
the subject, you're saying,
what do you say?
The subject, the person in the photo.
Yeah, the person in the photo, they didn't necessarily get to control their narrative, especially when like photography probably was a high buy-in point at some point in history too, in terms of a lot of different times in history. And now you have people who can control their narrative, but I think the thing that's really scary is it's like there's people who become really good at it, right? The people like Kim Kardashian or whatever, they become really good at controlling their narrative, and which isn't necessarily an eye roll thing to me. Like, I think that there is something to be said about someone who like, it is a skill set, right? Like it's like to know how to control your narrative, and outside of selling things, like just like this, like idea
that's
of like
narrative
I can
to control.
create a story because you are creting a story.
Yeah,
there's something to be said about that. But the thing is, you have, just like any other flood of information, when there's a master class of something so publicly shown, there's people who kind of break it down into the way they think it should work, and then it just becomes more and more toxic, right? Like, it's just like really fucking scary.
There's like so many like rules, like what he said and what he said.
Yeah,
like,
right. It's a game of telephone in that way, for sure. Like, it's like people. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think that the fact that, I mean, as a musician, this is I have friends who are writers, and something I've seen them kind of tweet about or tell me in person is like they'll get an email with like a musician's promo email, like, hey, check out my music, whatever, which they'll check first of all, like, right, like they're like, oh, I'd like new music's my job, but then the person links their Instagram, you click on the Instagram, and it's just selfies and like them with whatever their brand is, with literally no link to me. Like, there's no music involved. Right. It's just like,
yeah, no, for sure. That shit's boo-boo.
So, which I also as a fan have, like, someone has been like, oh, check out so-and-so's music, and I click on their Instagram, I'm like, there's only like a 5-second clip with you smoking a blunt. Like, I don't know what this song is,
but that's what your last album was, or what the fuck.
Yeah, like it's like the brand comes first.
Yeah. Now, one of the bigger reasons that I invited you here today, which I think is very interesting and what I've kind of been watching develop, and I think what I've spoken up a little bit about before, is the Nipsey Hussle situation. Now, you, in my opinion, and I mean, just as far as from what I've seen, it's not hard to see. I mean, it seems like you have one of the most used and reproduced portraits of Nipsey Hussle, like that has been shown up on the internet, on Instagram, on like in many places. Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, it's for the first like month. It even still trickles in now, but the first like month or so, people were just constantly sending me pictures, tattoos, shirt, whatever.
Tattoos, dude. That's what I saw too. Like, yo.
I think Rick Ross has it tattooed on him.
That's hilarious.
He also has that printed on his elevator, which I'm trying to figure out how that.
When you talk to him about that, like what?
Oh, he left me on red, so now I gotta.
Oh man. So okay. So we got a lot to unpack with this. Do you mind if I wake and bake while we do this? Because I want to hear this story.
Oh yeah, no, go for it. You're I can't see you. I don't know.
Oh, is my camera jammed up?
Yeah, I don't know if
we got a jammed up camera over here. Let's see. So, talk to me about the photo shoot in and of itself and your experience with that. Like before anything, I don't know how long ago that was, but talk to me a little bit about meeting you, about the photo shoot. Did anything stand out? What was your experience with that?
It's funny. A good amount of people have asked me like, how was the shoot? And I think it's like such an interesting question. Not to imply it's a bad question, but it's an interesting question because it's like it was a very normal ass moment because no one thought someone was gonna fucking die. You know what I mean? Like it was very like professional. I don't know. Like I'm a fan of his music. I was excited to make that photo, so I really thought out how I was gonna shoot it. But at the end of the day, I only got 5 or 10 minutes with them. You know what I mean? Like I have a necklace of Eritrea on. I'm like, hey, as Eritrean, it's like dope to meet you, and like, you know, it's just like it was very formal. Like I don't think anything. It wasn't like this like brothers meet for the first time as
right. It wasn't like, yo man, one day I'm gonna die and you gonna remember this.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's nothing like that.
And I think that as humans, you know, as we should, we kind of romanticize anything and everything when someone passes away. But it was a very professional ass moment. Like I was like, hey man, I'm just excited to shoot this. Nice to meet you. 5-10 minutes. The PR people walked them out. And that was that.
While he's on his phone, right?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, probably.
Well, shoot. So, you being Eritrean and having this whole thing go down, how's your opinion developed from when it happened to now that it's like kind of nobody really talks about it much anymore?
I mean, I still get like I got an email like yesterday, someone asking for a print. It's just like, I think people are still, I think just because the mainstream media cycle leaves something behind, there's still people on it. Not to imply it's as strong, clearly, like it's not as many people talking about it, but I think there's still a lot of people who are affected by it. But it's been weird. I think that the weirdest part is watching people want to monetize it. That's been like...
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about the fair use. How's that been?
How the what?
Sorry. Talk to me about the fair use and how that's been and how that's affected the situation.
I mean, I think it's just like you come across these websites that are like making paintings of my foot. There's a two sides. Like, so I have friends who are like, yo, you need to lawyer up. You need to like da-da-da. And I'm just like, listen, it's some random fucking t-shirt company from fucking the Midwest wants to make $500 off of someone's death. It's like, I don't even want to think about it.
So interesting. So I'm going to clear up really quick for people listening if they're not 100% keen on what the situation is. So Meron has taken he did a photo series, and it's one of the most crucial photo series of Nipsey Hussle. But it's also been one of the most reproduced, and you see it a lot everywhere. And as a photographer, similar in the music industry, there's I feel a level of, if not props or big ups that you may want for your photo. Maybe you want payment. Maybe the intellectual property situation you created, it's yours. Like explain how that works in the photo industry, though. Explain to the audience how that works when you're on Instagram and people can screenshot. Didn't you have I don't want to put you on the bubble, but didn't you have a situation with like Quavo, for example, or it may not be Quavo, one of the
Oh yeah, Quavo posted my picture and so the thing is Quavo posted my picture but didn't, none of these fucking rappers do, but like he didn't like at me, like, say like it was my photo. He just posted it. But
which is even worse than not trying to hit somebody up and throw them something.
Well, that's my thing is this, right? It's like I don't care about the clout. What I care about is like Sony or somebody seeing that picture and then hiring me to shoot something. Like it's not. I don't care about followers. I care about people with money seeing that who could hire me for bigger jobs. For me, I don't give a fuck about.
That was the case as well with the Nipsey Hussle photo?
No, so the Nipsey Hussle thing though is, I shot it for BET, and they totally have been great about credit and acknowledging me as a creator with that. The thing is, right, like at the end of the day with IP is like, for me, this is, I'm not speaking necessarily fully legally. It's just like my approach is
sure.
The only time I would.
This is not a perfect podcast.
Right. My outlook is if you're making money off of it, that's sketch. So it's like if you post it on your social media and don't at me, you're just a dickhead. But it's like if you're making a T-shirt out of my photo, it's like, hold on, are you running a business off of my content? It's like that's weird.
I saw that you did a post that was very, man, I love when my homies get open too on the internet, when they start talking about their feelings and shit, especially you. It's like, just talk about it. You were talking about how the situation affected you, especially the night of I think it was Saturday Night Live, when they had the John Legend performance with
that shit was
your boy Khaled, and it was on his shirt. Does this, I guess it's hard. I mean, I'm an empathetic dude, and I already know how you could possibly be feeling, but like you're torn. Am I correct? How does this affect you as an Eritrean, as a black dude in America? And like before we even get into like the shooting part of it, but like seeing that, how does that like affect you as far as the industry? Does that like bum you out? Does that make you want to work harder?
Yeah, there's a whole different, there's a whole lot of feelings, or rather layers of feelings. I think that specifically as Eritrean, so many people from the diaspora reached out to me. I'm talking about from like all over the world, and via DMs and stuff, and just being like thank you, essentially, right? Is like the sense of wow, because it's not a big country, right? So like it's like the fact that here's one of the few iconic Eritreans on a global sense was photographed iconically by another Eritrean. I think as a diaspora that's already not that big or acknowledged, people were just excited, and I think that filled me with a lot of pride. I don't want to say that felt good because it's sad, but it made pride. I think pride is the right, like I'm proud that I can represent, right, for my people and what that meant for everybody. But then on the other side of that, gun violence has always been a huge issue, not only for black community, but also a lot of the Eritrean communities, just like in general, like black people across this country. So like there was this, it almost felt like one of those like dark genie wishes type situation where someone's like,
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, like, oh, do you want a picture of yours to span the world and everyone, you know what I mean? And then for it to be an image that involves, arguably the scariest and saddest thing that could happen to a community was really hard for me. A lot of people kind of would text me or DM me or whatever, be like, oh, congrats, or like, you know what I mean, like some sort of congratulatory
that's
statement,
really,
which I don't,
be bizarre.
I don't blame them. Like I get it. I get the idea of like, wow, I get it. But like to me, it also is like, someone died. Like I don't feel good. I'm happy. I'm proud that I could represent, but I'm not. this isn't a congrats moment for me. Like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm happy that this photo is viral, and that's also why I didn't really chase. I think everyone can call me stupid for it if they want, but like, I didn't really chase like monetary. Like, I just kind of had this weird relationship of just, and, don't get me wrong, it's not like Nike put this shit on a billboard. It was mostly just like scumbags who are trying to. I don't want to call people scum, but like people who like right after this guy died are trying to make sellable art. I'm just kind of like, I don't
flip in the moment. It's a reactive behavior for sure.
I don't feel any. If you're donating, I haven't made prints to sell, mostly because I reached out a couple of his organizations and I hadn't heard back from them. So I'm just like kind of trying to find people to give that. I wouldn't want that money. Like, I just think that when someone dies, the way we can consume them after is really scary. I think he also represents, for a lot of people in the Habesha community, what a way out looked like. And so when he died, I think it was kind of a scenario where I think people kind of could feel like, oh fuck, if he can't get out, how do I?
Like, why would I even try to get to that situation?
I don't know if it's why would I even try, but like, fuck, he can't even get out. It says, that was my first. When I found out he died, like the fact that, so I was actually on a plane to Japan when the news broke, and I landed, and my phone went chaotic. Like, my phone just fucking fried. Like, it was just like hundreds of text DMs, all this shit, whatever, right? And the saddest fucking craziest part was, I think it was a text from I always kind of, when you land on a plane, you have a bunch of texts. Like, I always just kind of read family. I see my mom or my brother. I read my family texts first.
Yeah.
And my brother says, I'm like, yo, like Nipsey's fucking, so he says something, but he didn't say how he died. And the saddest fucking part is, I knew how he died. No one told me. The fact that I already knew how a healthy 30-something-year-old man would die, that's fucked up. You know what I mean?
What do you think? And before we go any further, with all due respect on this man's name, this is not. I don't want to make this like a too much of a what do you think situation. But you had said you knew automatically, or you knew instinctively how he died. How do you think his death plays into the narrative, like in a sense of it made sense, but it didn't make sense? And what do you, I guess I don't want to get too conspiracy with it. My question to you is, what did you take from this? Or what do you take from this in regards to the black community, in regards like what can we do or what should we do? Like, how can this kind of thing be prevented if it can? I don't know if you think it can.
Well, it's not a matter of if it can, it's a matter of what it takes to do it. And I think there's a conscious effort to prevent that being achieved. I think there's a blatant, obvious conscious effort to keep violence on the streets of America. But in terms of him, he did everything right. It's just a product of what.
So you don't think this is a death from above situation? You think this is pretty much a dumb street?
Well, it depends. Death from above. It depends what you consider a death from above. Like, I think it's a systemic issue of this country that caused it. So I do believe it's a death from above because it's something that this country an environment this country created, right?
Hey man, I'm about that. Hey, I feel that, son. Even if it's on the streets, it's still a problem. I ain't mad at that.
This is not a microcosm of culture. This is fucking something this country actively creates and continues. No. So it's not, the dude who even shot and killed him is like, that man is a byproduct of a broken country and system. To me, that's how I look at it.
No, I feel that.
So I don't.
So then I guess no respect. So then what would you and we can kind of close this out on this. And this isn't necessarily having to be related to the Nipsey Hussle situation in and of itself, but what would you change, if anything, if you could and you had the ability to, and we could set some resources up for it? What would you change, either about the photo community, dare I say the black community or the hip hop community or the young American community, but start with photo. What would you change about the photo community to kind of address some of the pitfalls that you've fallen into, and how would you what is the takeaway from this, or what have you taken away mostly from this?
Well, I guess there's two different. I'll start with the first one.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
a lot of questions.
No, you're good. I think the most helpful, and I'm very, anyone who knows me, I got my receipts run long and detailed. I'm a big believer in just transparency, particularly people who don't have much experience in your industry or whatever. Transparency is the answer. I think most people don't know how to ask a question or even know what questions to ask. So if you're transparent in your process, openly, I think people can learn a lot.
I think that's good for growth for everybody.
For everyone. What's the rising tides raise all ships or whatever. And I think that a lot of, is that the phrase? I don't, it's a white phrase.
It sounds like it fucking makes sense to me.
Caucasian phrase that I've picked up over the years. I think that, again, this kind of goes back to the brand thing. I think a lot of people's brand is to be for the people, their brand is, but they don't actually show how or when or where or how they do it. Okay. And then, and so I think the most effective thing, and this isn't just the arts, it's any, whether music or whatever, it's instead of telling people you can do it too, right? Mm-hmm. It's, hey, do you have a question how to do this? Right? Okay. I think a lot of people spend a lot of energy being like, look at me and my successes. You can do it too. You from the same place I am. That's some bootstrap shit to me. What are you saying, dog? You're not saying anything or doing anything. Leave that avenue open. Say, okay, if someone has a question. And now there's people who have, Rick Ross did that. He would have a DM with 6,000 mixtapes a second. So I'm not saying it's as simple as that, but I think it's just transparency in business. I would love to see some rapper who just signed a new maybe sponsor deal or something, yo, this is how this just played out, just so you guys know, instead of me Nike about to collab, yo, this is what just fucking happened, this is how this conversation, my agent talked this type of, even just letting people know all the moving parts of how something happened.
I feel that.
And what's the fear, right?
Those what you're describing there is dope, because it would prevent situations where guys like the dude Lil Yachty would be more interested in his situation. If he saw somebody talking about the moving parts of theirs, maybe when someone asked him, yo, what's your record deal like, he would have an answer, and he would know what's going on, and they wouldn't get trapped. No, that's super real.
But also, it's different, I guess, when you involve extreme fame. I'm not fucking famous, so it doesn't, it's different. But I do think, particularly when we go back to talking about the photo industry, I think a lot of people talk about, not all, right? It's not this everyone but me type. It's more I just think that you see a lot of people who talk about diversity, inclusion, or all these things, but they don't actually show any legwork of how it happens, or who they talk to, or how they did it. I think the funniest one is when people are don't hit me up to pick my brain. I'm just what the fuck are you? What are we but a library for the next generation? What's the point?
Right. Yeah.
What are you just
How do you
gonna
feel
hoard
about
information
charging for that time? Should people charge for that time, or should they chalk that up to the game?
I'm not charging this 18-year-old who wants to get into photography. You fucking weirdos. I'm not.
Hey man, I'm one of I have no problem with you. I struggle with it. I'm one of those weirdos at times. I know that there are people that they just want to hear or see you do it, and hear you or see you go through it. And I think they do that for a multitude of reasons, but mostly it's because they want to see if it's something that's worth them doing, or they want to. I've seen situations where you go through it, and I'm and that kind of thing for me. I think at a certain point, it gets weird, because I am also a believer in those who don't teach, and I've always been a better teacher than I've been a doer. I just I put myself. in addition to doing, I'm just a good translator of ideas. So I find myself in
it's a skill set.
Discussing things.
It's a full-on skill set. Many people can't explain things to other people. But I also think in terms of the idea of like these kind of situations where it can drain you in terms of like sharing information, just do it on your own terms, right?
What do you think? Yeah. Okay.
So like my outlook, for example, is
give back.
I was just doing a job the other day, and I had an assistant who's younger assistant. She's trying to like just kind of get back into photography industry and stuff. And I was explaining to her, it's like, for example, if you need me to look at something, it's not that I'm offended you need me to look at something and give you my perspective. It's like, it only gets offensive when you're like, hey, can you do this by Friday? It's like, wait, hold on. Like, you know, like, I think a lot of people do that. They've set these kind of terms of like, can I learn at my pace on your time?
Yeah.
That's the issue. I totally understand.
No, that's I can see that. There's one too. It's the questions that they don't realize they're asking that I'm also asking. Like, I'm in the same boat, and then you're hitting me up to try to figure something out, or it'll be like, I'll have something set up where I'm like, well, this is how much I charge to teach these kind of things, and this is specifically what I teach. And then it'll be like, then they look at the numbers and they say, all right, well, based upon what I know and what I'm doing and my income, they just look at their numbers and they're like, I'm not going to pay that. Let's like trade. And then they'll find something that they can do, which is like dope. But then they'll think that what it is that I know is like not worth a damn. So the value that they're giving back is like not much of a trade.
Yeah,
and then it becomes like those are the hardest ones, because those are usually stuff where you're trying to like work relationships.
Well, listen, you know, there's a difference. I do think also when we're talking about people who are trying to get into something versus someone who's already kind of, these are all different. You know, it's all nuanced in that way, obviously. So it's not always that. Yeah. I think that if someone wanted to pick my brain who's also another working fucking photographer, that'd be kind of weird. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But if they're black, I'll probably entertain it. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I feel you. But also it's just like, I think for me too is like, there's plenty of bums, but there's a lot of people who aren't. You know, it's like if someone is like a dickhead in that scenario, that sucks. But there's plenty of people who also would totally reciprocate. You know, it's like, it's just kind of, I don't know. I think I just like take it as a personal L.
Half full. Yeah, no, I feel you. I work every day on trying to keep an optimistic mind.
Yeah, but also it's like, you know, I guess I also like, if you're not good to read a character, I can see how that just fucking.
I'm very gullible. I get gullible. I mean, I'm a good emotional.
You're the nicest guy. That's what it is.
Yeah, everybody's totally different with it, man. It's a thing.
But that's also why I don't judge. I don't necessarily judge anyone who kind of, for example, like someone who might post like something like, "You can't pick my brain unless you pay me." Like, I don't necessarily judge it. I'm just kind of like, I hope that's only about grown ass people who want to be. You know, it's just like, I hope you're not thinking that about like a 19-year-old.
I see. It's not I cut the circle smaller. It's the ones that are like, there's a post going around now too that's like, one bad vibe. If I catch one bad vibe, I'm out. You know, or like,
what's that even mean? What's that?
Yeah, well,
I don't get that.
I know, man. I as a person who leaves events when I don't want to be there, and as a person who don't like going out, I get the core concept. But when you're in a position of power or in a position of information, it kind of makes you like, you're like presenting this social air of inaccessibility. And I think that's like the fucking new sunglasses.
Right.
Like,
but I also think that if you set the tone of transparency in the way you talk about things, you don't feel as guilty. Like, if you're someone who's successful but don't tell anyone or show anyone how you're successful, there's gonna be a lot of people who are like, hey, I love your work or whatever, I want to reach out and learn more from you. And you're gonna block them off. Fine, that's your business. But it's like, if you're a transparent person who's like, this is how this happened, you should, hey, I did, you know, I saw a photographer recently, she did like this panel discussion, and I thought it was so smart. Like, in the like description things, you're like, hey, like, I've been going to this for 2 years, and now I'm a speaker. Like, oh, you know, like, that feels so great, whatever. And she wrote like kind of in the caption of her Instagram post was like, I met people who later got me jobs. Like, she was just like, this is a move. Like, come fuck with this place. Like, and I think there's just things like that where I'm just like, that's what actual accountability of just like transparency is. Like, that's what you do for each other. Like now it's on your plate to go. Like, oh, you know, if you make up an excuse why you can't go, that's your business. But if you're just, I think a lot of people, particularly in kind of this like era of like diversity and whatever, all these hot words, a lot of people use that as their brand, but they don't want diversity. They just want to get put on.
You mentioned diversity a couple times. What do you mean when you say people say that they are like a kind of like a spokesperson for diversity?
Well, I think
are they referring to like hiring more black people?
Oh yeah, I think that there's plenty of people who are like, marginalized people who are in positions where they're doing well, and they're in their mind they represent said marginalized group. But I'm just
the marginalized. So the person in the position of power is a minority as well.
Yeah, I guess, right. So it's like, is it rather than someone in the position of power is the minority, it's the person who's finding success in an industry that doesn't. So let's say it can be something as like, women in a male-dominated industry, person of color in a white-dominated industry. It's like whatever, right? Like the marginalized body in that space. I think a lot of people are using that point as like, look what I'm doing as a person who's not usually here. But they're not actually doing the work to leave the door open behind them. I don't think.
That's an interesting. That's a tough one.
So what is it, right? It's like if you're really out here saying I'm the first black person to da-da-da, this is great, we finally this and that and the third. It's like, are we looking to get one, or are we looking to make it the average? Even out the average. Like, what is really what you're trying to say? Because it doesn't seem like you really care about averaging anything out.
How do you feel about singling out when they are like doing opportunities? How do you feel is a good decorum in a situation where there is a minority situation and the person's should they or could they, or is it smart to be like, hey, I'm looking for black people for this opportunity, I'm looking for a minority for the, is it like I don't say should it be okay, I don't think we're the rule makers, but do you think that that's a decent way to approach it, or should there be some like, should it be more low key, or how should it happen where you're looking for it filling that up? Because at the end of the day, it's like, let's say for example, I do I've done this. I've done like a remix contest or some rap contest, and then my submissions coming in will be all white people, and then all of the DMs I get are black people saying, yo, this is dope, I'm going to submit. And then at the end, no black people submit, and then white people submit. And it's like, I can't say, yo, only black people submit. You know what I mean? Like that happens. It's happened. So I wonder, the same thing happens with companies that I work with too, where they're trying to figure out where they want to diversify. But how do you diversify in an environment without making it look weird? Like, how do you say we're trying to get more of this to happen without making people uncomfortable?
I think, well, first and foremost, when you're talking about, like, I'm like, for example, like, I hire, like, when I need a photo assistant, like, I make it, like, when I text people and stuff, like, do you know any black or brown photo assistants? This is just
you say that out loud?
Yeah, I just say it, because I don't think that it's, and anyone who has a problem with that, I'd be like, well, you only hire white assistants, but no one says anything. So, so
would you put it on your Facebook? Would you like post it publicly and be like, yo, I'm looking?
If you look through it, you probably could have found that. Like, I don't think it's weird, because to me it's not weird because there's just not that many. So it's like, and the only way there's going to be more, right? So like, for example, if I hire, X amount of black assistants and they become really good at it, and then they have a little homie who's interested in it, like, oh, don't worry, I can try to get you on a job. Like, that's the only way things change, right? It's like creating a network. Rather than looking as individual successes, you have to look at it as our networks being created, right? How does anything work? Nepotism in this fucking world, right? So it's like, you have to create a network where people can bring people in rather than one time. You know what I mean? So it's like, when I say I want a black or brown assistant, it's not like, it's less about the individual person I'm bringing into the mix. It's more like, oh, the more of these people I hire, then the more their network can gain from that too. Okay, now this person became a successful assistant. If that little cousin from so-and-so from wherever is interested in photography, they're like, oh, like, get on this job with me, we'll figure it out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only way any of this shit works. That's how generationally it works.
That's a man. Fuck. I get pumped because when I hear that, I believe it, and for some reason, the type of black dude that I am, I feel like makes me feel so small and compared to how many different stories, if not how many different black stories exist. Because I know that there's a quote black narrative, and I know that my opinion isn't necessarily, I don't say in tune with the black narrative, but it's almost like because my opinion differs from majority of black people on a lot of issues, it's almost like my narrative no longer is the black narrative. So, and what I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you were talking about.
But sorry to interrupt, but
no.
I think it's important to think about though is like, and I think again this is kind of something that this whole kind of era of like whatever we're in right now, like this fucking woke era we're in, where people are trying to imply their perspective is the black one, the monolithic like black perspective. Sure. And I think it's not to the point that you're making of like how you feel little in that conversation. I think a big part of that is because a lot of people or things that are getting attention are implying that they represent a monolithic, like I am the black this or whatever, right? So it's like I think it's like weird. I think weird is the right word. Like I think it's weird how we talk about blackness, and not all of us, not everyone, not a lot of people, but it's just like right. It's easy to grasp onto for like old white guys with money. So it's like what we keep getting shoved in our face is like these very one note things about whatever. But it's okay for your like you're Naim first and through a black lens, right? It's like not a black dude going through Naim's lens. Does that make sense? Like you're you first, but then it's through a black lens. Like, and I think
it's like it's just coincidence that I'm a black dude in this.
Well, or rather, there's the things that you experienced because you're black that then will shape the Naim thoughts, as it goes through it, right? Like,
yeah.
And I think,
it's fucking mind blowing, man.
But I also
it really is. Well, because like being, I didn't grow up in the hood as much as I.
No, listen, most of these motherfuckers didn't. First of all, like you know what I mean, like.
Well, that is the big part of the black experience, the struggle. So what happens is that, like guys,
it's what sells.
What's up?
What's up?
It's not a big. This is my thing. It's black trauma isn't a priority for us. It's just what sells. So we're being told that it's what sells. There's just as many happy black things out there. We made jazz, motherfucker. Like we do a lot of things that make us happy. Like, it's just like what sells is trauma. So people act like that's our fucking thickest layer of, I don't know. But you know what? I want to identify, like, I'm also Eritrean American. I'm not African American. I don't have the generational trauma of fucking Jim Crow. And
you know what I'm saying? Born in Seattle?
I was born in Atlanta. But still, like,
I don't consider that's like African American.
No, but I was born here, but I'm just saying it's like in terms of like my parents come from a country where they know like their history,
you're connected to the actual
country. So I respect maybe I'm being, whatever grain of salt you need for whatever my opinion is, because I respect that there's a certain type of trauma that comes with being from fucking slavery that maybe I'm not respecting when I say that. But I do think like the easiest thing to sell is black trauma. So a lot of times we act like that's our biggest fucking thing. But it's like we do so much. That's food, music, culture, clothes. Like we do so much that's happening.
Dude, I'm all for the black trauma conversation. I think it's a very important conversation. I think it's good. I think that it's almost like it's what Chappelle did. Chappelle said it best. Chappelle said, when that lady got mad at him because he had said that like black people went through something, or he had said something about women, and she's like, you don't know, we suffer more and whatever. He said, he says, I suffer and you suffer, but I don't suffer more and you don't suffer more. And I think that that's like there's this thing where I'll say, all right, I'm this way because I've gone through these experiences, and it's almost like the voice of the zeitgeist comes back and says, that doesn't count. That doesn't count as an experience. And I think that's the narrative that I kind of like because and it, of course, and it goes back to the Nipsey thing and what is really happening and what should change where, and how many people are actually experiencing the gun violence, and is that really holding how many people back, and I start going down that fucking whirlwind hole. You know how I be, bro.
Yeah, that's true. You do be going down those holes, but I think but back, just to touch on that gun violence thing, it's like it's bigger than gun violence and always has been, just the same way drugs are bigger than like the opioid epidemic is bigger than people who fucking like heroin, right? It's like you have a capitalist system of fucking opioid industry. So it's like there's a whole industry built. I mean, that's what it is, right? There's a whole multi-level industry that's built on keeping people in these places. So I think it's weird when we like we can't stop gun violence until we actually think about what this country spends its money on. It always just comes back to
you got to like go down and do the root.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like if you approach any of these issues, I personally believe, like you approach any of these issues with the lens that it's not being done to people, you're not going to go anywhere. Like it's not how do we get guns off the street? Like it's like, oh no, there's an active effort to keep these people violent. How do we change or burn down whatever we have to burn down? Like it's just like,
hey, don't. You heard it first here on the Bassick Conceptz podcast. It didn't come out of my mouth.
I just think it's being done to us. A lot of this is being done to us, not we just happen to want to shoot each other.
It's respectful and honorable. I always think about what is a very palatable way you can approach and address it, and I think you doing the black hiring is a very important thing. I always wonder. I'm always like not trying to make I like making waves, but I always, for some reason, there's always like a couple people that I don't like to upset, and it always seems to be they say don't impress people that you don't give a fuck about or something, or who doesn't care about you. But and I get into this conversation with my pop, so he's a big believer that I don't fit in the EDM community, and that's the reason why I haven't gained as much traction as maybe I want. And I think that it's important for me to balance like what I want to happen in the industry versus not what's realistic, but what I have to make people uncomfortable, but it's like what can really happen? Is it really there's no black people in the, let's say, electronic music industry because the culture is just separate, or is it because they're in hiding, or is it because they're not being let in, or is it how do we address that and change that, or does it need to not be changed?
There's definitely, I mean, we black people started EDM.
But then you can't. I'm not gonna go into a room of people, white people dancing and be like, "Yo, you know where this came from?"
Hold on, but it's also, and I think this is across all creative industries, particularly because they're all mostly white dominated. All of them are white dominated. It's like, what are your considerations of what are your considerations of success? So outside of financial, like what tours do you look at? What tours do you look at headlining imply success? What rooms do you want to be in that imply success? And I think that a lot of times in creative industries, people look at certain spaces and say, that's the definition of success. I want to get there. Mm-hmm. But it's a space or headline or gallery or whatever that is completely culturally designed to keep you out of it, right? So like when you say like the EDM, I don't know EDM culture enough. It's like,
let's say EDC or Miami Ultra.
Ultra is clearly meant for fucked up white people, right? Like at the end of the day, like
that's who buys tickets.
I mean, I don't know well enough. I think what I'm saying is like if you look at Ultra as EDM success, but that's something that clearly supports a certain culture. Why maybe there's like a EDM more of a smaller show that happens in Chicago that's fucking mostly black people. Like if your success looks like your people knowing you and respecting you versus the industry knowing you and respecting you, it'll make you a lot happier. That's how I approach photography. There's a lot of
you are right.
Like there's a lot of institutions in photography that are considered successful in photography, but I don't care about old white guys telling me I'm good at what I do, right? So like for me, it's like I'd rather have the whole Eritrean diaspora know my photo of Nipsey than be in some gallery where it's just gonna be a bunch of white guys in turtlenecks. Like I don't, like that's more important to me. And I don't, as long as my family is good, as long as I'm good financially and my family's good financially, those are my meters of success. I've never cared about white people thinking I'm good at what I do. I don't care if they ever knew what I was doing. Like, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, so it depends what your meters of success are. What'd you say?
My natural instinct is to want to unpack that more. I know, because we can fucking go down that road forever. Your perspective on that. Where do you think that comes from? Is it just because is it because you know your roots, or do you think a lot of people feel that way? Or do you think like you're a rare breed?
I don't know. I think it comes from two things. I think at a fairly young age, I started reading a lot of fucking amazing black shit, like in terms of what we were doing as a people, which I think a lot of us do. I think we're objectively better at everything in terms of creative industry. Sorry, I don't know what else. I know that's a bold statement, but it's just.
Hey.
So to me, it's just kind of like.
Heard it first here.
If that's how I feel about that, why would I care what a board of white people think? Like, it's not, the math isn't there for me. So it's kind of like, that's not my meter of success. Now, are those accolades help your career? Do those accolades help your financial situation? Do those accolades help secure finances and whatever? Like that, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like this, I associate those institutions to financial backing. And that's fine. Like anyone who finds success in those places, anyone who wants to find success in those places, I associate it to find, like, oh, you're trying to land that bag. Like if I see somebody shoot for some company that's fucking a bunch of fucking old white dudes, you know, it's like, oh, you secured a bag. I get why you did that. I don't think I don't care about the cultural elements of that. Like, to me, I just don't.
So it's really, and that's interesting. It's like managing expectations for what you want your outcome to look like will help it resonate with you a little more.
Well, it's like what feeds your soul, right? Like, it's just like, it's not about even managing expectations. It's like what gave you those expectations? Like, why did you think that was a big deal?
And I don't disagree with you, but I think that, for example, let's say I have somebody that, like an artist that I'm into and I look up to, regardless of their color, whether because they work with all types of people. They're just a good artist, and they have a bunch of good artists around them, and you're into that music. At the same time, there's a whole bunch of people as well into that music, and those people don't look like you. And you ignore it because you're into the music, everybody's into the music. Then it gets to a point where you and anyone else in that community who wants to aspire to be that, then you all immediately look different. They all look the same, and then you look like the outlier. And I mean, in my opinion, I would say it's when you're like the one black dude and there's a whole bunch of white dudes, and not to say you want to impress these white dudes per se, but it becomes like, well, you know, getting on that show, you've seen people on that show that you respect. And I've seen people on the show that I'm a fan of and I enjoy. So it's almost like for me, getting there and getting that respect means that I've broken into that community and I've not infiltrated, but just if made a difference, I've made it possible, like you say, for some young black kid to think, yo, I want to be there. I want to go there. Give him a reason to want to be involved with that.
But do you even it feels very much like things only have resonance because we give it to them, right? Things only matter because we collectively decide they matter. Money, anything. So it's like if we all collectively think ultras matters, then yeah, it's gonna matter. But if we also all collectively decide a fucking EDM, a black EDM scene in fucking Detroit that happens, there's usually only 200 people that like turn up to it. That's where we need to fucking go and grow and invite people to. That's gonna now become that thing you're just talking about. Like, it's just like people collectively decide these things matter that white people told us to think matter. And I just don't get. I'm just like,
I always looked at that, and I know this is where it goes back to that black narrative, and whether it made me uncomfortable or not. I always looked at that as the same way I looked at like an HBCU, like a historically black college, where I get the concept and I get the value in the environment, but it's almost like saying like, well, why don't we just go back to segregation? Like, why don't we just go back to that and not complain about that? And then, not to say we should, but it's almost like, it's like,
that's a good point.
Because I wouldn't want them to be I wouldn't want them to be like a white festival. Yeah.
So this is where I agree with you completely, and this is where that kind of comes in. Where I think it's like, and I think I differ from a lot of people in terms of opinions of these type of things. It's like, it's less about like our thing and we have a place where we do it. Anyone can come to that thing. I'm saying like recreating what we value, like the institution of ultra.
It the black festival, but we can have white DJs there if they want.
Sure, yeah, if they're good in their you respect. But because this is the thing, right? Like to me, is this thing. It's not. If you create a space in which you're valued, you will be valued. And the right thing, in my opinion, the right thing is to then create an equal space of value. If you go to Ultra or whatever, or you go to some institution that's built on white excellence and white fucking institution, like that's like, we're the best, you guys are lucky to be here, you'll never be able to cut out a piece of that pie. Whereas if you create an actual inclusive space for yourself and you make a place where you feel comfortable and your community feels comfortable, then recreate. Then if it grows, then you grow. Like,
and then you be the open-minded one. And
you be better.
And white people,
you be fucking better. Is really what this is about. Like the idea that, and I think that's where a lot of this kind of conversation I do think gets distraught is like people who are like, I want a place where only black people can go. I'm just like, I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is creating space where black people are like, I'm down to go here. You know what I mean? Like, and not, or dude. I think I can be successful there because there's plenty of fucking people who look like me. And that's not even about blackness. That can be about gender, sexuality, like any marginalized communities. Like, there's multiple trans DJs on the lineup. Then it's like, now you're introduced. Like, it's like created. Like, you have to we have to reset instead of trying to squeeze in to these places that clearly don't give a fuck about you. You see what I'm saying?
Swag. You know, I completely see what you're saying. I think that if anything is a beautiful point to call this man, that was crucial. This whole interview is crucial. Meron, man, I appreciate you coming here. I have to get you back to talk about music. We have to like come back and have something else to like. We got to do this.
I'm
again.
washed, bro. I didn't listen to this shit no more. I feel like I'm just like so left out of music nowadays. Like,
no, well, this is we have to have this conversation. We're grown now. We're not where we were 10 years ago. You know, it's like I'm like working with my little brother, and you know, it's interesting seeing the things that titillate him and the things that he's into and what he looks forward to, and it's very interesting. But either way, man. Fucking perfect podcast whenever. Bassick Conceptz. Make sure you check out all the links. I'm gonna put all types of links to Meron's down below, and you can check out his shit, explore, you know, the Instagram and all the good things. Is there anything you want to tell anybody, or any place you want anybody to look, any projects, any shout outs? You know, this is your moment. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you do shout outs, you got events, you got things to look at, website.
We move in silent like G and lasagna. You know what I mean? It'll come up when it comes up. I
feel you. So MeronPhotography.com?
Yes, sir. MeronPhotography.com. Instagram's Meron_photo. MERON_photo. So if you want to check that out on there.
It's a wrap. Yo, I appreciate you, man. Love you, bro.
Dude, love you too, dog. Peace.